First, the President's Award. It recognizes an individual who has made outstanding contributions to furthering the work of the Federation. The purpose is to recognize and encourage important contributions to the improvement of the lives of children with special needs and their families. The contribution must have enhanced the implementation of the mission of the Federation. Board member Joe Petner wanted to be here personally this evening to present this award to Dan and Betsy, but he's out of the country. So I'd like to ask Rich to come and read his brief message.
Joe Petner, one of our board members and retired principal from Cambridge, he has fans. He was the principal of the Haggerty School at the time the film, including Samuel, was completed, and had been part of that film and got to know Dan and Betsy in that role. Joe really wanted to be here, and as Jim indicated, he's out of the country, but he sent this message. To Dan and Betsy and friends, Jody and I are in London, England, waiting the arrival of grandchild number 2. The baby is expected any day, but we'll be in England through the week and we'll miss the gala event and the recognition of your great work. I wanted to send my congratulations to you both and the boys. Over the years that I have been associated with including Samuel, I have found the reaction to the video across the wide array of audiences as compelling and poignant. What I think is very, very powerful about the film for those audiences is that regardless of the specific disability, the themes you speak of are universal. You have given voice and put a face on the lives of people with disabilities and have raised some important questions for all of us to consider about the larger purposes of our schools, communities, and the democracy in which we live. You and Betsy both speak about inclusion as a question of human rights. Your story as a family is a reminder to us that the idea of belonging and membership, being part of a community, is a basic human need. You have articulated how central it is in our lives to feel loved, to have friends, to feel that we are making a contribution in our families and in our communities. The video helps us learn and better understand that to include everyone is to open up those possibilities for learning and appreciating our humanity. Democracy is, after all, based on the common belief that every human being is of infinite and incalculable value, each with a unique intellect, emotional, physical, and creative makeup. This is the very essence of the message conveyed in this video. I think this video has touched so many people in so many ways. I can't say enough about how useful it is to have this documentary to engage in talking and thinking about the issues and the realities of creating an inclusive world. Toward the end of the video, Betsy talks about renewed hope. In her words, I am reminded that Elie Wiesel once said that just as despair can come to one another only from human beings, hope too can be given to one only by other human beings. It is this theme that I have found to be most enduring and what has been given to us through your film. With deep appreciation, Joe Petner. Now, Dan indicated that he would like to have Joe's words written down and framed. And so indeed, we have them written down and framed for you tonight to take with you. So we're so thrilled. Do the presentation.
Take a bow.
Okay. Thank you.
My name is Dan Habib. My wife Betsy and I have 2 boys, Isaiah and Samuel. When I became a photojournalist 20 years ago, I did a story on one of the first elementary schools in New Hampshire to try inclusion, or mainstreaming as it was called at the time. At Beaver Meadow Elementary, kids with disabilities began to join the same classrooms as kids without disabilities. Now my son goes to Beaver Meadow. He has a disability, and I think about inclusion every day.
When Samuel was a baby and we first started realizing that he might have a disability, I remember being really afraid. Because all the things you imagine for your child were things I was afraid about. How could he run around on the playground and play kickball when he couldn't run? How could he yak on the phone with his teenage friends when he has trouble talking? How could he get a full education and go to college when he can't hold a pencil? I just couldn't imagine beyond that, and I was very afraid for him and for us.
Are you coming over to me? Are you coming over to me?
I am Isaiah, Samuel's brother. He was born when I was about 3 years old. We love to watch like the Patriots games together. You didn't get that, did you? You didn't get that. Teddy Bruschi goes down. We love to play tackle. No, actually, I got you. There's sunlight streaming from his smile.
Samuel likes spaceships. His favorite color is yellow. Does he like sunflowers? I like sunflowers.
Those are Samuel's classmates, his friends. He's going to grow up with these kids, and they'll know him as Samuel, not the kid in the wheelchair.
What a powerful story. This documentary is so relevant to each of us in our own personal journey with inclusion. It is my extreme pleasure to honor Dan Habib and Betsy McNamara for their extraordinary work in using the power of documentary film for inclusion education and public awareness of those children with special needs.
Thank you. Thank you. It is such an honor for us to be honored by the Federation, which is, after all, a group of very powerful parents, family members, and individuals with disabilities. And so we feel very honored to be recognized by you. It is, after all, those of us who are impacted most closely by disability who are the strongest advocates and the leaders. We have to be leaders in this field. And in the course of doing that, we're changed for the better, just as our children's lives are changed for the better and our society is changed for the better. So thank you. Along the way, of course, in our journeys of being leaders and advocates, which is sometimes exhausting, we meet people who share our values, who share our mission, and who become our partners in this mission. And I'm happy to say, and let me say, when we meet them, we hold on to them as tightly as we can, and we don't let them go. And I think we change them for the better, and they change us for the better. And I'm happy to say that we have a couple of those folks at our table tonight. Samuel's teacher, who was in the film, is here tonight, and his current paraprofessionals here at our table tonight. And we are so grateful. Barbara O'Brien and Cheryl Lamprecht. It's okay, sorry. They're shy, we won't. Of course, we also are blessed by family members who see Samuel for who he is, who's an amazing child, and don't see him just as his disability, which is, after all, what we want in society. And so thank you, because every one of us has to do this work every day, and it's great to have the chance to celebrate it together, and we appreciate being honored.
Thank you. First, I just want to thank the Federation for inviting us, for honoring us, and for also promoting and using the film for education around Massachusetts and beyond. I also want to just take a moment to thank the parent advocates in the room. Can you all just accept our applause for a minute? We are filmmakers, we have jobs, but primarily we are parents, and it is hard work, but it's joyful work as well. And I think about what I did yesterday, what Betsy did this morning, just walking Samuel to school with his friends every morning. It's probably the best part of my day. And actually, when I think back to elementary school, I remember the walks to school more than I do school itself. So I think it's probably one of the best parts of Samuel's day. And it's that moment of, what do you talk about on the way to school? What games do you play? Who kicks the rock? Who rides on the back of Samuel's wheelchair that day? And those are the moments that I think embody inclusion. It's not just what happens in the classroom, because beyond the classroom, because Samuel's in school every day with his peers, when he goes and plays baseball, when he's in the Cub Scouts, when he goes to camp, he's with his friends. And his friends know him. They know how to talk with him. They know how to interact with him. So I'm completely convinced that inclusion has been an incredible thing for Samuel and for our family. But I think that's not the argument that's going to change the world. I think the argument that's going to change the world is inclusion is good for everybody else as well. Because when I think of what the true nature of diversity is in our society, it is ethnic diversity, it is socioeconomic diversity, it is diversity by sexual orientation, it's diversity by where we live geographically, but it is diversity by ability. That is part of our natural diversity, and we should embrace that. So when I think about what Samuel's peers have experienced by being with him, I think about a story that Samuel's teacher, Barbara O'Brien, told me. A few years ago, there was a lot of refugee resettlement happening in New Hampshire, and a young child from Burundi, from Africa, came into the classroom. This child knew no English language, knew very little about the American culture, and all the other children in the class embraced this child, used all the creative means of communication, hand gestures, body language, whatever it took to make this child feel welcome. And Barbara said to me, that's because of Samuel. That's because of what Samuel's taught them in terms of creative interaction, in terms of embracing diversity. And then I think about, thank you. And then I think about a child who suddenly has a grandparent who has a stroke or develops Alzheimer's or has a cousin born with a disability. That child who's been exposed to this kind of diversity will not see that as something they need to be afraid of. They will not see that as the end of the world. They'll see that as a difference and something that they can embrace that person just as they would if they didn't have a disability. So that's the diversity that I hope we're moving to in our society. And I genuinely believe that someday we will look back on this time of segregated classrooms, separate schools for kids with disabilities, like we do now when we look back to the 50s and 40s and 30s and say, why were we separating people by their race? Or back to the late 1800s and early 1900s where we say, why were we separating people by their gender? Does that make sense? It seems so crazy now, so foreign. I think someday we'll look back on separate classrooms and separate schools the same way, and I really appreciate the work that the Federation's doing to push this movement forward. Thank you.